Hello everyone, welcome to the second video of this dopamine video series. In this video, we'll be discussing dopamine's role within the body, as well as dopamine's use as a pharmaceutical agent. Lastly, we'll discuss dopamine receptors and explain how dopamine communicates to the body. Its role in the body, dopamine is involved in many bodily functions such as movement, memory, pleasure and reward, motivation, behavior, sleep, arousal, learning, and lactation. Its physiological effects are acting as a vasoconstrictor. That means relaxing and constricting blood vessels proportional to the amount of dopamine available. We'll discuss how we can use this to our advantage soon. It also increases salt and urine removal, as well as reducing lymphocyte activity in the immune system and reducing insulin production in the pancreas. It can slow down gastrointestinal content, moving, and protect the GI lining. Now, as a drug, dopamine can be used for drug therapy. So it can be used in advanced cardiovascular life support, or ACLS for short, during cardiac resuscitation to improve blood pressure and cardiac output. Dopamine can be a stalling measure to manage hypotension, which is low blood pressure, during symptomatic bradycardia until a pacemaker is available. When combined with dobutamine, it can manage post-resuscitation of hypotension. In general, dopamine's hemodynamic effects make it a good treatment for cardiac issues and vasoconstriction issues, such as treating critically ill newborn infants with shock and cardiac failure. However, it's not only used for its increased cardiac output, but also for increasing blood pressure and urine flow, usually not as the primary treatment, but as an adjunct. However, its benefits do not come without risk. Those with ischemic heart disease patients are more at risk with dopamine usage. And commercially available dopamine hydrochloride may contain sulfites that can cause allergic reactions such as anaphylaxis and asthmatic episodes. Patients with a history of constricting vascular diseases such as diabetic endarteritis, Raynaud's disease, and atherosclerosis are also at higher risk for decreased circulation. Now, in order to understand how it's able to do all these things, we need to understand how dopamine reacts with the brain. In terms of receptors, a very basic introductory, cells communicate through signal transduction pathways. When a signal is sent from one cell, other cells, such as hormones, can bind to a cell receptor either inside or outside the signaling cell. The binding leads to a series of chemical reactions in the cell, reaching the target. Now, dopamine are considered slow neurotransmitters because their signals are passed through secondary messengers. Now, the fundamentals of receptors. The majority of signaling receptors in the human body, including dopamine receptors, are G protein coupled receptors, or GPCRs. GPCRs have both an intracellular C terminus and an extracellular N terminus. GPCRs are also known as 7-pass transmembrane proteins because the receptor has 7 helices that cross the transmembrane, which allow it to bind and couple with the G protein. Essentially, dopamine binds to the dopamine receptor and, depending on the receptor type, performs various functions. On a cellular level, there are 5 dopamine receptor types, most encoded by different genes. The D1 receptor is encoded by gene 5q31 to q34. The D2 and D4 receptor are on chromosome 11, the D3 receptor is on chromosome 3, and the D5 receptor is on chromosome 4. Their functions vary due to the different genes. Dopamine receptors are expressed in the hippocampal dentate gyrus and the subventricular zone, but they can also be found in the kidney and within the circulatory system. So, as we can see here, D1 receptors are delegating memory, attention, impulse control, regulation of renal function, and locomotion. D2 controls memory, attention, locomotion, attention, and sleep. Not sure why I put attention twice. D3 and D4 regulate attention, impulse control, sleep, and cognition. And D5 controls attention, cognition, decision-making, and renin secretion. Now, onto the pathophysiology of receptors. Dopamine receptors can be categorized into two major groups, with group 1 being D1 and D5 receptors, and group 2 being D2, D3, and D4 receptors. Group 1 receptors couple to G stimulatory sites and activate adenylyl cyclase. As a result, CAMP, or cyclic adenosine monophosphate, is produced, which produces protein kinase A, or PKA. Group 2 receptors, however, couple to G inhibitory sites. In turn, adenylyl cyclase is suppressed and potassium channels are activated. Group 1 receptors are often found in the striatum, nucleus accumbens, olfactory bulb, and substantia nigra. Group 1 receptors are essential in regulating the reward system of the brain, motor activity, memory, and learning. Group 1 receptors also activate phospholipase C, which leads to intracellular calcium release and the activation of protein kinase C, which is a calcium-dependent protein kinase. Group 1 receptors also inhibit sodium and potassium ATPase in the kidneys, which results in electrolyte excretion and renal vasodilation. Group 2 receptors, however, are primarily located in the striatum and also located in the external globus pallidus, the core of nucleus accumbens, the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the cerebral cortex. As a result, they affect bodily movement and coordination. And one way we can see this effect is through the result of antipsychotics, which block D2 receptors, and in turn can cause tardive, which means late, dyskinesia. So dyskinesia means irregular or uncontrolled movement. It can also cause medical-induced Parkinsonism, increases prolactin production, and initiates galactorrhea, which is lactation outside of pregnancy. Group 2 receptors are essential for the survival and development of dopamine neurons, whereas D1 receptors, when activated, regulate the development of neurons in general. And as we can see here, the most common receptors in the central nervous system are D1, D2, D3, D5, and D4. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.